We'll look at that at the end anyway. But this link here, jesperkid.com. Jesper Kid did the sounds for, have you, any of you played Assassin's Creed? Yeah. Assassin's Creed and Kane and Lynch as well. He created all the music for that, and you know how kind of fantastic the music is for Assassin's Creed as well. It's kind of really dramatic, and he's kind of looked into using something that fits really well with the time period. So if you go to his website, there's a lot of examples of music from the different games he's worked on. It's really impressive. I'm hoping to get him to Teesside for Animex next year, actually, to deliver a talk and a workshop on it. Okay, and at the end of this we'll go through some links I've got actually, because I've realised I haven't really put enough images in here for you. Animators in the games industry are responsible for the portrayal of movement and behaviour. Any of you wanting to be animators? Yeah, a few of you, cool. So it's not just for the characters and creatures, you've also got to think about the animation on the other objects, you know, kind of scenery, vegetation and environmental effects. You know, what animation is going to be going on in the background? You might have all kinds of animated signs and things going on. How will different objects animate depending on the weather as well? And you've got to think about each character as well. There's so many little animations to create for each character. So, you know, kind of, if they've got a gun, kind of drawing the gun and shooting, but then what if they're running? How are they going to draw the gun differently? You know, if they're drawing it while they're running and then shooting, then putting it back while they're running, it's going to be kind of a different animation for that. So you've got to make extensive libraries, reusable animations for each character, and they are really extensive libraries. They're also usually responsible for the technical process of rigging and skinning the characters. I was speaking to some studio owners recently, and they were saying that riggers are the really difficult people to get. So they tend to, if they can get a really good rigger, they pay them a lot of money, and they keep them. They're the last person they'd lose if they ever had to lose people, because, you know, not every animator is actually particularly good at rigging, so some studios will employ people just to do all of the rigging and skinning for the characters. Animators need to work closely with the programmers and artists to create the best balance between smooth movement and optimised performance on the platform. So by that, you know, if you're animating for film, it's obviously completely different to animating for, I'll say completely different, it's quite different from animating for games in that, you know, obviously there's a lot less keyframes as well to just to kind of save on memory and everything and processing power. So I was talking to some animators who were saying that a good thing is sort of cutting out a lot of the keyframes in an action, so they'll go straight from kind of, they might spend a few more keyframes in preparing to strike with the sword, so actually the build up to it, and then the actual sword strike, you know, the hand will actually just go from here to here, they won't kind of animate in between. So they'll actually spend more animating up to animating the build-up rather than the kind of actual motions themselves. Okay, so considering creating animation for games, you need to have a grasp of aspects such as character modelling, rigging, skinning, kinematics, and basic cinematography as well is particularly useful. You should be able to show proficiency in an animation package such as 3D Studio Max, Character Studio, or Maya. Thinking about this, it kind of depends on your experience as well. We did employ some artists that had absolutely no experience in 3D modelling or animating in 3D at all. We employed, you know, a few animators to actually come in and work as 3D, you know, 3D animators. But the thing was, they had worked at Disney. It was round about the point where Disney decided they were only going to work in 3D. I don't know if you heard about this a few years ago. They said, right, scrap all this 2D stuff, we're just going to work with 3D animation from now on. And they fired, I think it was something like 250 animators that had worked there for absolute years. And these animators were all brilliant, and it was kind of crazy that they all got fired, because the guys that we employed at Pitbull, even though they had no experience in 3D at all, within 3 weeks they were creating the most fantastic 3D animations, because they really understood the principles of animation. You know, because they'd worked at Disney so many years, they just, you know, they knew animation inside out, so it just didn't take them long to just pick up the 3D packages. So, you know, if you really, really understand animation, it's not that difficult to apply it, just a case of just picking up the package. So animators should be able to reveal attitude, emotions, and mood through a character's movement and behaviour, thus creating memorable characters that will appeal to the players. So knowledge of human and animal movement and facial expressions is essential, and the ability to lip sync is particularly important too. I think also a bit of a knowledge of acting as well. Our animators, before we took on the guys from Disney, our animators, they'd just be sitting at their desks all day animating, you never saw them move. Until the guys from Disney came in, and then we'd all be looking thinking, what are they doing? Because they'd want to know how to animate something, and they'd kind of stand up and they'd just actually kind of prance around the room and do all of these kind of actions. At first everyone was just like, what? So just kind of pretend you didn't see the crazy people at the other end of the office. But it really worked, and then the rest of the team really got into using that as well. So, get an idea of acting and do kind of act out the animations you're doing. What we've got now in the labs at Teesside is we've got, in all of the animation labs, we've got great big mirrors so that people can get up and kind of act things out in front of the mirror to see, and then go back to the computer and work through it. Testers. Has anyone done any testing work actually before? Okay. It's worth seeing if you can get a little bit of testing work during the summers. But quality assurance technicians or testers perform the vital role of testing, tuning, debugging and suggesting refinements that ensure quality and playability of the finished game. It's also a very, very good way to get into the industry, I think, actually, testing. Some of my students tend to turn their noses up a bit at the thought of working as testers. But, you find, as I said, once you're in the industry, you can kind of really push out and try and kind of branch into different roles. And the number of testers we'd get over from America, towards the end of the project, we'd have, a number of testers that come over from the US with the producer and kind of play through the game quite a bit. And these testers, they'd come back a couple of years later as producers. It seems, like, particularly in America, it's like a really great way to kind of move up into a producer role. Because you're getting that, so at that level you're getting an idea of what makes a game work or what breaks a game. You'd know all of the problems to look out for, and you have a really good idea of gameplay. And this is all perfect for a designer or a producer, so it's kind of a great way into those two roles. So they also test for bugs in the software, from complete crashes to minor glitches, as well as looking for copyright and potential liability issues. We did have a couple of things crop up, such as, so I'm trying to, who was it? I can't remember if it was Budweiser or Pepsi, tried to sue us because we'd accidentally left their little logo in a kind of shop window, I think, in a building we'd made in LA. And it was tiny. It was a different colour because we'd been changing colours around. Hadn't even noticed it was there. I don't know how they even recognised it was a Pepsi or Budweiser logo. So it was a different colour, and it was only maybe about 10 pixels big. But they actually tried to sue us over that because we hadn't sought permission to put it in there. They didn't win, but that's what testers have to do, kind of look out for that kind of thing as well. Okay, so it's a great level entry role, a good way to find out about the development process, and can lead to roles such as design, production and project management as well. So you need to have IT competence, so including use of spreadsheets and database packages, as well as a good standard of English in order to kind of document and communicate your findings to the team. And towards the end of a project, testers are kind of the least popular people in the entire studio, because as an artist you're constantly getting all of these sheets of paper from the testers telling you to correct all of these little things, or this poly is kind of slightly off, can you go in and tweak that, this texture needs sort of moving over by a millimetre, and you get all of these sheets back, and then you've got to work through all your stuff and make all the corrections. So everyone kind of, you start snarling when a tester walks towards you towards the end. But it is all worth it in the end, because if they didn't find these things, then the publishers would send them all back at the end. So they need to be analytical and methodical, and above all, avid game players. You've got to demonstrate a detailed knowledge of the industry and game titles on the market. So if you're going for a job as a games tester, it's worth kind of writing reviews of games you've played. Say what you think works particularly well about them, any kind of changes sort of you'd make without being sort of too critical about the company you're applying to.